I get emails all the time from people who, when they receive their work, they're like, you don't realize how, like, this has changed my life. Like, this is so amazing. And I feel like a real collector now.
Hello, and welcome to Art Restart, where we explore how artists are reinventing their fields and building a new landscape for the arts. I'm Piercarlo Talenti, the producer and editor of this podcast, which is brought to you by the Thomas S. Keenan Institute for the Arts at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. In this episode, we'll be learning from multidisciplinary artist April Bay. A self-described sci-fi geek and blurred, April Bay loves to explore speculative realms through her wildly multicolored and multitextured work. Here's an example in a recent installation of hers titled Atlantica, the Gilda Region. She invited the viewer to imagine they just landed as aliens on the faraway planet Atlantica, an opulent Afrofuturist wonderland. First exhibited at the California African American Museum in Los Angeles, the show then traveled to the Nevada Museum of Art in Reno this past fall. This episode, however, is not strictly about April's art. I was really eager to speak with her because of a project she created to transform one particular speculation, since we're talking about speculation, into reality. Namely, what if the people who collected her art looked like her and or had similar backgrounds to hers? What if the world of art collecting invited collectors who, for a whole host of reasons, had felt excluded from or intimidated by it? She named her new venture the Equity in Collecting Program, and it is already bearing fruit, with April currently reviewing the third round of applicants to the program. April spoke to me from Los Angeles, where she lives and works, including as a tenured professor at Glendale College. I started by asking her if there was one particular aha moment that led her to create the Equity in Collecting Program, or whether it was something that developed over time.
It was both. I had a moment where I realized I couldn't afford to buy my own art. And that was so mortifying to me. And it kept bugging me. Like, it was like the sore in your mouth. You can't stop tonguing.
That's complicated because also it means that you had achieved a modicum of success, right? That's a complicated feeling.
It is. It's complicated. And it also meant that if I couldn't afford to buy my own work, then my family couldn't. And that people who looked like me couldn't. All of the art historians, art professors that gave me a chance, like gave me my first show at the university galleries that did reviews of my work. These people who actually made my career couldn't afford to buy my work. And so I started trying to figure out, like, okay, how much power do I have with these galleries and with these collectors, and how can I create equity in our working relationship to bring the price point down to be able to sell at market, but with a voucher or a discount.
Could you explain what that means?
Yeah, so because I teach, I also have a long background in equity work, student equity work. So I've sat on committees where we've formulated application processes and we've examined the needs of our students to be able to create equity through funding programs. Similarly, I wanted to come up with a program that was close to like a Section 8 program that we have, for example, where you're getting the same product, an apartment at market value, but the government subsidizes it with a voucher program. We have this system in our schools for textbooks and art supplies and all kinds of things. And in order to do that, I had to get the gallery to buy in and invest in it. And I do that by how I make my work. So a lot of my work has installation elements that the physical objects fit within, like a jigsaw puzzle. And the elements of the installation that get left behind once the work leaves the space, for example, the fur, most recently satin fabric, that fabric is purchased as part of an installation agreement, either with the museum or the art gallery. Whoever's showing this installation, that's part of the installation budget. And so they pay for all of this fur. And I get it after the show and I recycle it into the equity and collecting works. So the artwork is essentially the same as if I would make it within my practice, but instead of paying for 100% of the production cost, it's offset by whoever exhibited the work that leftover or recycled material is being used.
And so that difference is what goes into the voucher?
Correct.
Okay, so give me, just to break it down, give me like a kind of a nuts and bolts examples of how it would work, and how you decide which of your pieces will become part of the program, or are they all part of the equity and collecting program?
The equity and collecting program works are a part of their own series.
I see.
And that's also in reference to my personal collecting philosophy and how genuine collectors see collecting. Like, you want to make sure you're getting everything within that house to get a full collection. And so it's also referencing, collecting cards or figurines, etc., which ties into my work and the sci-fi nature of it, but that's a long story. So the equity and collecting works are within their own body, and one hopes to collect all of those pieces as they grow throughout the years.
I see. Okay, so you're really creating, in another way to look at it is you're creating a kind of a rabid fan base. You're creating people who want to have as much of the collection as possible.
Yep, and that's how it's turning out. A lot of people who collected in the first round were very eager to get into the second round because it was important for them to have one from each round.
Okay, so let's get into specifics then, because you're currently accepting applications for the second round. Am I right?
No, that passed in October. So
okay.
The third round I'm working on.
So let's talk about a previous round. Can you give me an example without naming names? Give me an example of someone who bought one of your pieces through the program who couldn't have afforded to collect it without the program.
I can give you professions of
Okay, great.
and data, because I am collecting data to discuss with the galleries after every round. We talk about the data. It's mostly, Black women, I would even say overeducated Black women that are in white collar positions within the art world. These are women who have given me
So these
some
are
of my
women who
first
have already
opportunities.
deep roots in the art world and have a good sense of their own tastes and of the contemporary art scene.
Yes, and who contribute significantly to the creative capital. Like they're doing writing within these institutions if it's not even part of their job title. They're doing curation, they're working in nonprofits. So that's the highest demographic. And then right after that are curators, art writers, freelance curators in particular, emerging curators.
That's amazing. As you've said it, people who are really creating the cultural capital but actually can't afford to own the art they love.
Exactly.
Okay, so give me an example of somebody what the steps are for this person to be able to collect your work.
Yeah, so usually we put out a press release because it's more than one gallery that participates in the program. That's to give people the choice of where they want to purchase from based on where they're located.
How many galleries are you working with?
Right now, I'm working with 3. And so the press release goes out. My website is the only place you can apply. So a lot of people have already learned to just check there. And there's an email list that when people email me, I just put them on the list so they get the notice right away. And then they apply through my website. And it's an application that's pretty typical that you would find if you were applying for any other type of aid or voucher. And there's a question that I pay attention to in particular because I'm looking for people who actually want to collect and learn about collecting and not someone who just saw my work on Instagram and wants a discounted piece. So they have to answer several questions that help me understand like where they first saw my work, what my work is about, and then their positionality in life that makes them feel like they qualify for the equity and collecting program.
Once you say give that person a thumbs up, does she or he get to pick the piece?
So after that point, it becomes a regular acquisition. So just like any other collector, when they contact me, I don't like to deal with that part that comes with actually executing the sale. So I say thank you. I'm going to direct you to my galleries. When they fill out this application, they select which gallery they want to work with. And so when the data comes on my side, I just direct the list to each individual gallery. And then the galleries reach out to the potential collectors, and they do exactly what they would always do. They vet them to make sure that we're not selling to flippers, and they vet them on their side how galleries vet potential collectors. If they're new collectors, we've talked
I've got to
about
tell you, I had no idea that there was a vetting system in galleries to prevent flipping.
good galleries. Yeah, my
Okay.
galleries.
All
Yeah,
right.
I can't speak for the industry, but the people I work with, they do check up on collectors, see if they've purchased from other galleries before, see if I check with my artist friends to see if we have any complaints. Most of these collectors are new collectors or people that I know and that I've worked with, but I want them to get the experience of collecting. And so I've had these conversations with my gallerists about being patient and explaining things and holding their hands so they know what the process is like. And this is also supposed to help them take the next step of collecting other artists and not feeling so overwhelmed and knowing what a good gallery should be like when dealing with new collectors.
You do not, through this process, you do not reduce the value of your work, which is an important thing to keep in mind here. But then how does the voucher process works? In other words, you get the full price of the work that's sold. How does the gallery fill in the voucher?
Okay, so a tangible example is with the last round, the artworks are worth $5,000 each.
Mm-hmm.
That's the cost of my smallest work. And
And
the
what
once
size are we talking about?
12 by 12,
Okay.
12 by
But
12
as I've
inches.
seen your work, and it's that doesn't capture because it's also three-dimensional too. But anyway,
Yeah.
okay. We have an idea now. Yeah.
Yeah. So once they pass the application stage, I have now said, okay, it's okay for them to get a 90% discount. This whole process is the same. Like if a museum approached me to acquire something and they said we need a 20% discount because that's what our budget is, then we talk about it and we agree on it. So it's the same thing, only this time I'm like, these people who are applying are significantly disadvantaged or they're marginalized and they meet this criteria, so now they get 90% discount.
Criteria they've established through their application process.
Correct.
Okay.
And so when they go through the gallery gives a 90% discount. I should go on the record and say that none of the galleries I've worked with have wanted to take a cut. They've all refused several times. However, because this program is a little bit bigger than them for me, it's about collecting data and proving that it's sustainable so that other artists can bring this data to their gallery who may be hesitant because they don't think it's going to be worth it. For them to get 50% of this severely discounted piece on work that we've already spent money on and that's been recycled, I'm trying to prove that it's not only sustainable, but it's not going to take away from me working in the studio or the gallery servicing the sale. So everybody, it functions as a regular sale, a commission sale.
So forgive me. So then where does the rest of the 90% come to pay you?
What do you mean?
So in other words, this person got it at a 90% discount.
Mm-hmm.
But you will eventually get the full $5,000 value of the piece, right?
No, it's a discount. Just like with every sale that we have, I mean, artists, when they sell normally, we get pressured to give discounts. Like there's some collectors that just come up and they say, I demand a discount. I always get a discount. There are collectors that have relationships with the gallery to where the gallerist is like, oh, I always give them this discount. And so we're doing the same thing, only the discount is acting as a equity and it's being assigned to people who actually need it and not millionaires who just want to get a higher investment return.
So then forgive me, can you loop it back in with the idea of the vouchers?
What do you mean? It's like it's the voucher is the 90% discount.
Ah, I see.
We still are making money. Like this collector is still paying $500 for this piece and that gets divided. And there's usually 12 pieces per gallery. There's also collectors who meet the criteria of the equity and collecting program, but they choose to pay full price. And we usually have about 2 to 3 of those collectors, and that 100% of that goes back into the program.
So, how did you get the your galleries on board, and what do you think the trick is as you're collecting this data? What do you think is going to be the trick to get more artists and more galleries to copy this program?
I think that at the end of the day, artists should be operating as a business because, this beautiful state of California surely taxes us as such. And obviously, galleries are businesses as well. And both businesses have to be able to come out even for it to be sustainable. And so, what I'm trying to prove with the data is that all of the money that we spend on my big, huge shows with all of this fur and all of this excess stuff, we can save it and reuse it to create works that don't take as much material cost or labor cost.
Ah, thank you. That was the piece I was missing.
Yes, that's and so usually it's seriously unsustainable because I've had museums and galleries just throw away things that cost like up to 2 grand for a show just to cover the walls with it. And so if we could recycle that and it just gets over the years resold as other work. I mean, I could always do that in the higher priced works. And I do. But if we've already invested in that show that we expected to throw away anyway, we might as well recoup that and create a program to where we can diversify the collector base and bring them into the art world.
And so, what are you hearing from your collectors?
First of all, I'm meeting really cool people that have been following me for years and never thought that they had a chance. And so that's been really beneficial. I get emails all the time from people who, when they receive their work, they're like, you don't realize how, like, this has changed my life. Like, this is so amazing. And I feel like a real collector now.
Oh
And
my God, to know that your work is cherished that much,
I know
right?
that's
Yeah.
what I think when I read those emails. I'm like, you're supporting me. Like, you really want to help me out. Like, and the equity and collecting program does help me out significantly. It allows me to have, like, that's one of my favorite streams in my practice because I know that it's going to a bunch of nerdy collectors that are like me because I get a set too. So I forgot to mention that. Like, this resolves. Now I get my own work, and these are pieces that I really, really like. And so it makes me feel so amazing to know that, like, when it's finished, I get first dibs and I can just take whatever I want, and I can afford it.
You get to collect your own work for real.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
As you know, collecting is also a way that some people are able to build wealth. But it sounds to me like you take pleasure in having collectors who have a deep heart connection to the work. You yourself are a collector. What is do you have an ethic of collecting?
I collect what I like. I'm a nerdy collector. I'm looking at like a signed copy of like a portrait of Worf and Avery Brooks from Star Trek. Like, I have figurines. That's the kind of collector I am. So the artwork I have is from artists that, like, I'm obsessed with, and there's going to be a room for them. Like, that's the type of collector I am. I have no complete knowledge of how people make money off of art other than flipping it. And I used to be really against flipping, but now I'm just kind of like, I feel like it's uncontrollable and there's no way to really prevent it or stop it.
One thing I have to say that astonished me, and I learned this later in life, is that unlike, let's say, a writer who owns the copyright to her work, so every time it's performed, she gets residuals on it or royalties. Visual artist does not make a penny off a resale, right?
Correct.
Is there at all a movement to change this?
I remember when I first moved to LA, there was a law that we learned about in school, a resale law, and then it just kind of went away. I think it's something that, like, in order for it to change, it would need to be beneficial for galleries or collectors even. But it's not, so it's not going to. Artists don't really have a lot of autonomy in changing things like that
And
unless they're
they're not
millionaires.
unionized,
Correct.
and they can't afford to simply go on strike and not sell their work for a year.
Yeah, there's a really big artist that sells for millions that an article came out talking about how their work was flipped by someone they trusted and loved, and they couldn't do anything because you can't. You just have to deal with your own feelings about it.
How long did it take you to work out the specifics of the program?
Um,
And did you consult with peers and colleagues?
I talked about it for a long time. And then when I realized like it was going to have to be something I just did on my own, like I talked about it with my galleries for a while and they were like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, this is great. Yeah, yeah, this is great." And when I saw that like, "Oh, I'm going to have to actually do it for it to start." then then I just put it on my website and I was like, and I told them, I was like, "This is what I'm doing." And they're like, "Okay, I guess we should meet about it." And we talked about it and they were confused at first, but then I was like, it's just like a regular sale. Instead of, we give discounts all the time. Instead of giving it to people who don't deserve it, we're giving it to people who do. And once the first round happened, the second round was like, okay, we got this. We know how to do this. Because it also requires that all three of them be on the same email chain working together. And sometimes collectors bounce. Like if the piece
Wait,
they want,
why is that? So why do they all have to be on the same email chain?
because sometimes collectors bounce. Like they choose one gallery because they want a specific piece and then that piece sells before they have a chance to respond. So then they ask the New York gallery if they have that piece, and then the galleries have to communicate with each other to be like, okay, this collector dropped out, but I sent them to you to get this piece. And so the initial list I send them can change based on collectors changing their mind.
I would think also that a gallery might be really interested in having a whole new set of potential collectors, new clients, basically, who, if they're suddenly, if their life changes or they get a promotion, might be able to afford things at full market rate, right?
Exactly. And we've already started that. We have collectors that bought for the first time through my program that are now purchasing from other galleries because they have that, that experience. It can be daunting to start that process. I remember when I was a student, I used to get panic attacks walking into galleries because I was like, do I belong here? Are they looking at me? Am I too dirty to be in here? And that's a lot of like concerns that people have entering those spaces that they don't sometimes feel welcome in.
You are also a tenured professor. Are you teaching any of this or talking about ways to create equity in collecting with your students?
Oh, yes, long time. My students are going to cause a lot of problems once they get out into the art world. Like, I show my students my contracts, I show them emails
Oh,
that people send me, I show them my calendar, I teach
that's
them how to
amazing.
put up a calendar, I teach them about taxes, everything. In fact, my two assistants that I've been working with for almost a decade, they were students. I saw them throughout their entire academic career, and then they came and worked for me. One of them's going to be my studio manager. I teach them all of the things that I didn't that I didn't get taught when I was in school, and then I had to fumble and skid across the sidewalk to learn. So yeah, they know exactly how much that they should be paid when they get asked to do things. I show them everything.
That's incredible. Did you know you wanted to make that part of your teaching practice from day one?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because I had a few professors that were like that. And if I could have crawled into their bodies, I would have. Like I didn't want to take any other professor but them because I felt desperate. I felt like if they're willing to be this transparent and help me, where else should I be? And even though I didn't have access to them for all of my academic career, they had a huge impact on me. And so I'm going to give my students 100% of that instead of, oh, they just take one class and get some help throughout the 3 years or however long they're in the program.
Why do you think that doesn't happen more often, that art students are taught the business side of things?
I think academia does not want the gallery and commercial aspects of this career to come into play. It's about, craftsmanship, the art of making, and then theory and philosophy, what your work means and how it makes people feel. But I didn't get a lot of the nitty gritty part because that's not something they want us to aspire to while we're students. They want us to focus. This is what I was told as an academic now. I can see within my peer group that there are a lot of educators who are just doing it because they need to pay the bills. They're not really interested in meeting these students as their peers in a few years. Whereas, like, when I started teaching, my biggest fear was that if I failed someone in this classroom, they could be in a group show with me in 2 years. Like, they could be rude and disrespectful, and I have to work with them in 2 years. And so if I have this huge opportunity to, like, mold and morph and educate and just throw as much as possible at these students, and they're here and willing, and I teach at a community college, I would say maybe 95% of my students are aggressively willing to be in that classroom. They absorb everything. And that's a benefit to me. But not all artists who teach should be teaching.
I want to end by asking which of your current projects or upcoming projects, what's on the horizon that you're really excited about?
So I'm working on this collaboration with. I first met him as a chef. He's morphing in his career. His name is Akwasi Brenyamensa. And I first met him in London. He did the dinner for my show, my first European show, and it was phenomenal. And so now we're working on a collaboration where we're designing dishes based on the premise of it being from the planet that I make all of my work from. And so Freeze Week LA is happening this week, and we're going to be hosting a brunch from another planet. It's titled "We Learned to Love Ourselves Until We Were Full." And so right now he's he's in the other room working on the recipes, and I was out in the garage working on installation elements because I'm creating an installation that people will dine in. And that's what I'm excited about. It's happening this Saturday.
That's amazing. I'm amazed you took the time to speak to me this week. Do you get to taste, and do you have veto power?
Well, we're having a rehearsal the night before, so I'm going to consume on that night and the day of. But a lot of the dishes are based on dishes from the Bahamas and Ghana. I'm from the Bahamas. He's from Ghana and London. So we're mixing all of these cultures. So yeah, I haven't had anything yet. I'm waiting. I'm like waiting for the air to change in the house to see if he's going to cook something, but nothing yet so far.
If you'd like to learn more about April and read a longer version of the interview, please just head to uncsa.edu/artrestart. If you're a fan of a change-making artist you'd love to see featured on Art Restart, won't you please let me know? You can find me on Instagram at PCTalenti. Be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified as soon as each new episode drops. We've got some really fascinating conversations in the pipeline. I can't wait for you to hear them. Our theme music is by Shanghai Restoration Project. I'm Piercarlo Talenti, and on behalf of the Thomas S. Keenan Institute for the Arts, thank you for listening.